It's 6 a.m. when Ilara Vance, bone-tired after a 12-hour shift turning over rooms, collapses into a deep sleep in the presidential suite of a luxury resort. Just minutes later, Liam Sterling, the millionaire CEO of the tech firm that rented the entire floor, finds her and mistakes Ilara for a high-end corporate consultant. Instead of being fired on the spot, she receives an offer. But every lie carries a cost, and when the truth is finally revealed, she will be humiliated in front of everyone. But even the invisible know how to rise from the ashes. The sun had barely kissed the frozen peaks of the Colorado Rockies when Ilara, for the last time that dawn, pushed her cleaning cart to the top floor of the Aspen Summit Lodge. Her eyes burned and her feet throbbed with a dull ache. The presidential suite was her final room. It was pure luxury, Egyptian cotton sheets, heated marble floors, a breathtaking view of the valley. Ilara just wanted to sit down for a single minute. The mattress was so plush, it felt like an embrace. "Just for a second," she whispered, and she was gone. At 6:45 a.m., Liam Sterling, having just landed from San Francisco, went straight to the suite. His company had reserved the floor for a series of confidential meetings with investors. When he opened the door, he found a woman asleep on the bed, dressed in a dark uniform, her face serene. He hesitated, surprised. This had to be the consultant his assistant mentioned she'd hired in a hurry. He stepped closer and with a gentle touch on her shoulder said, "You're early. Shall we begin?" Ilara Vance's day always began at 4:30 in the morning. She'd make her brother's oatmeal, heat water for his bath on a tired old stove, and check his medications with the precision of someone who could no longer afford a mistake. Caleb, her 11-year-old brother, was born with a mild form of cerebral palsy. He struggled to walk, to speak clearly, to write, but his laugh was like no other, and it was for that smile that Ilara did whatever it took. At 26, she had already given up on so much, on her psychology degree, on the dream of becoming a child therapist, on the idea of ever living on her own, but she would never give up on Caleb. After their parents died in a highway accident, it was just the two of them. And the world had not been kind. The housekeeping job at the resort was what kept a roof over their heads. A small wood frame house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, but it paid for groceries, the gas bill, and sometimes there was enough left over for a chocolate bar she'd split with her brother on the hardest nights. Ilara wasn't one to complain. Even exhausted, she smiled at the guests and treated her colleagues with respect. But inside, she carried a silent, crushing exhaustion. For the last few months, Caleb's treatment required a special orthopedic device, and their budget was stretched to its breaking point. That morning, her body simply gave out. In the most expensive suite in the resort, sleep came over her like a switch being flipped. She didn't even hear the door swing open. When she woke, Liam Sterling's face was less than 3 feet from hers. "Is everything all right?" he asked. She sat up, startled and confused. She didn't immediately recognize the elegant man in the dark blazer, his gaze steady and intense. "I'm so sorry, sir. I just—" she stammered. But Liam raised a hand. "No problem at all. You're the organizational climate consultant, right?" Ilara froze. Consultant? She glanced down at her own uniform. She hesitated. Liam smiled, mistaking her silence for shyness. "Don't worry. We really need you. I have 20 minutes before my first meeting. Can you walk me through what you've prepared?" And right there, caught between fear and a sliver of opportunity, the lie first took root. Ilara was never a good liar. As a child, she couldn't even hide a stolen piece of candy. But that morning, standing before Liam Sterling, she saw no other way out. All she could see was her brother's face, his worn-out wheelchair, and the doctor's note taped to their fridge. Essential to begin assisted physical therapy with a lightweight exoskeleton. Estimated cost, $18,400. The exoskeleton was an adjustable metal frame used by children with limited mobility. It would give Caleb the chance to stand with support, to take steps around the house, to play with more freedom. When she first learned about it, Ilara had cried in the staff bathroom. Not from sadness, but from hope. A hope that quickly turned to desperation. Even working double shifts, it would take her over 3 years to save that kind of money, and that didn't account for medicine, bills, or the days she had to miss work when her brother was sick. She tried everything. She sold her good smartphone. She organized a raffle with the neighbors. She started a GoFundMe that raised $237 in 2 months. It was a drop in the ocean. Almost nothing. When Liam mistook her for a consultant, something inside her screamed, "Go!" She had no idea how to answer his question, but then she remembered the organizational psychology classes she took before dropping out of college. She remembered how she always observed the resort managers, the way they treated their staff. She remembered the conversations with her fellow cleaners, their quiet pains, the anger they swallowed for fear of losing their jobs. She took a deep breath and said, "I prefer to start by listening. Before I propose any changes, I need to understand the people, the culture, what drives each department." Liam looked taken aback. "No pre-packaged presentations. No. Humanization starts with listening." He nodded slowly. "Interesting. Go on." And so she did. She spoke about empathy in the workplace, about recognition, about how small actions can transform a company's climate. Liam listened intently to every word. When she finished, he thanked her. "You're different. I like that." Leaving the room, Ilara nearly collapsed. Her heart was a runaway drum against her ribs. She had lied. But she had also spoken a truth, her truth, the truth she knew in her body, in her skin, in the calluses on her hand. That night she returned home to find Caleb watching the same old DVD for the 100th time, a cartoon about a hero who flew with wings made from scrap metal. "One day I'm going to fly like that, right, Ellie?" he said, smiling. She wrapped her arms around him from behind and whispered in his ear, "One day, sweetie, even if I have to build those wings with my own 2 hands." In the following days, Liam reached out again. He texted, asking for another conversation. Then he called. He said his company, Terra Nova Solutions, which specialized in clean technology, needed someone exactly like her. "It's just a 3-month contract," he explained. "I need someone with a human perspective. Would you be open to it?" Ilara took a long moment to answer. She thought of Caleb. She thought of the cost of the device. She thought of all the times she'd been called invisible by her own managers at the resort. "Yes, I'm in," she replied, and hung up with her conscience split in two, one part grateful, the other terrified. The next week she signed a temporary contract as a climate and engagement consultant. She would be making 5 times what she earned cleaning rooms. With that, she could buy the exoskeleton in 3 months. She made a promise to herself. Just 3 months. Then she would tell him everything. But the world of the wealthy has its own invisible traps. And a lie, even one born from love, can become a prison. With each new day, Ilara felt like an imposter living in a dream that wasn't hers. She would arrive early at the modern offices of Terra Nova Solutions, an award-winning environmental tech firm where even the coffee tasted like privilege. She dressed in simple but elegant clothes, bought at thrift stores, tailored by a neighbor who did alterations. She wore her hair pulled back with light makeup. She passed for a senior consultant, despite having no degree. In meetings, she spoke with a steady confidence. She used technical terms she remembered from her abandoned college courses and from late nights reading articles on her phone. The team loved her. Employees smiled when she walked in. The board praised her modern and sensitive vision. And Liam started finding more reasons to talk to her, sometimes to discuss a project, other times just to chat. "How did you learn so much about human behavior?" he asked one day. Ilara smiled, trying to hide her unease. "By living, by watching. The world teaches you if you know how to look." But the truth was a heavy weight. With every compliment, the guilt grew. With every new look from Liam, so did the fear, because he was starting to see her with different eyes. And she was letting her guard down. On a rainy afternoon, while they were waiting for a late client, Liam asked, "Do you have family?" Ilara swallowed hard. "I have a brother. Caleb. I take care of him on my own. And your parents?" "They passed away a few years ago. And your resume is impressive. I never thought about bringing in someone from outside the traditional circuit. I'm glad I took the risk. What was the name of the university you attended again?" Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She invented the name of a private college from out of state. Liam nodded, buying it completely. But that kind of lie didn't go unnoticed by everyone. One person in particular began to sense something was off. Victoria Davenport, Liam's ex-girlfriend, a powerful event planner, influential and a friend of the Sterling family. At the company's monthly cocktail party, Victoria showed up unannounced. Beautiful, impeccable, radiating elegance. When Liam introduced her to Ilara, Victoria's eyes glittered with something between contempt and curiosity. "Maria?" she asked, tilting her head. "Ilara," Liam corrected quickly, "our organizational climate consultant." "Ah, of course, consultant." The tone was sweet, but the venom was there. That night, Ilara went home with a knot in her stomach. She felt that Victoria's presence was a threat, and she was right. In the following days, Victoria reappeared at the office more often, always with vague excuses, always cordial, but she watched too closely, asked too many detailed questions. One afternoon, passing Ilara in the hallway, she remarked, "You have working hands, you know. Calluses. It's admirable to see that in someone in our field." Ilara smiled, deflected, and walked on, but inside she knew she was being hunted. Meanwhile, the pressure mounted. Liam put her in charge of an internal project on social inclusion. The results started to show. Employees reported higher satisfaction. A new active listening program was implemented. Even the most rigid directors were starting to change their attitudes. And in the midst of it all, something Ilara had feared was happening. She was falling in love. It was in the small gestures that Liam disarmed her, when he pulled out her chair, when he truly listened, when he smiled after a simple comment she made, and when he looked at her. It wasn't like other men. It was as if he saw something in her that she wasn't sure even existed anymore. Value. But how could you love someone while being someone else? How could you build a relationship when its foundation was a lie? Every night, Ilara would lie on the thin mattress in the room she shared with her brother and wonder, how much longer can I keep this up? She'd look at Caleb sleeping and think, would he understand? The lie had started out of love, but now it was a bomb, ticking away. The invitation arrived on a Monday morning. A cream-colored envelope with gold lettering, family lunch, the Sterling residence, Saturday at 1 p.m. Liam delivered it himself. "I want you to meet my aunt, my cousin, and my mother. They want to know who this woman is who's changed my company and my life." Ilara felt her heart stop for a second. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." She smiled, but inside, a knot tightened in her chest. Meeting the family meant one thing: more lies, more risks, and maybe the end of everything. She barely slept that week. She bought a light blue dress on a credit card, paying in 3 installments. She spent afternoons watching videos on etiquette, body language, table manners. She rehearsed answers to potential questions about her education, experience, and background. Everything had to sound natural, true. On Saturday, she woke early. She made Caleb's breakfast, organized his medicine, and left him in the care of her neighbor, Mrs. Gable. "Going to meet your prince today, Ellie?" the older woman teased. She just gave a weak smile. Her heart was too heavy to laugh. The Sterling residence was in a wealthy suburb of Denver, surrounded by tall pines and immaculate gardens. The mansion looked like something out of a movie. 2 stories, wooden balconies, light curtains dancing in the breeze. Liam was waiting for her at the door. He looked handsome in a white shirt and an open smile. "You look incredible," he said, taking her hand. On the veranda, more than 10 people were chatting animatedly. Men in light blazers, women in discreet jewelry, people born with a surname and privilege. "This is Ilara," Liam announced, "the woman who's brought more humanity into my life than anyone else." All eyes turned to her, polite smiles, an expression of curiosity here and there, but Ilara could feel it. They were analyzing everything, her posture, her vocabulary, the fabric of her dress. "And where did you get your degree, dear?" asked an older woman with white hair, who she would later learn was Liam's mother. "At a private university out of state," she replied, trying to sound casual. "Oh, of course. Which one?" "The Northwood Institute," she invented, her voice steady. The mother nodded, but her eyes, they seemed to hold a flicker of doubt. The lunch continued with talk of travel, business deals, stocks, French culture. Ilara said little, but she smiled and listened. Until the doorbell rang, Liam went to answer it, and returned with Victoria Davenport. The atmosphere froze for a second, but then the smiles widened. "Victoria," some said, "so good to see you again." She was carrying flowers and had a dangerous glint in her eyes. She looked stunning. She sat at the table as if she owned the place. Liam seemed uncomfortable but tried to keep the mood light. Dessert was served, a red berry tart and coffee. Ilara thought she had survived, that it would all blow over, that no one would find out. But then Victoria stood up and cleared her throat. "Forgive the interruption. I know I'm just a surprise guest, but there's something I feel I have to share." Everyone glanced at each other. Ilara felt the blood drain from her face. "It's about our dear Ilara." She pulled a thin folder from her purse and laid a few papers on the carved wooden table. Liam frowned. "What is this, Victoria?" "Records. Documents. I found it strange that you knew almost nothing about your girlfriend's past, so I did a little digging." "What do you mean?" Liam's voice hardened. "Her real name is Ilara Vance, and she has no degree. She dropped out of her psychology program in her second year 4 years ago. She was working as a housekeeper at a resort in the mountains until 3 months ago." The silence was brutal. Everyone at the table stopped eating. Liam picked up the papers. He read them. And then he looked at Ilara as if he were seeing a complete stranger. "Is this true?" She tried to speak, but her throat was tight. Her heart pounded in her temples. "Ilara, is it true?" His eyes were wounded. The warmth was gone. She took a shaky breath. "Yes." A murmur went through the table. Liam's aunt brought a hand to her mouth. His mother looked down, ashamed. "I didn't want to deceive you. I needed the money. It was an impulse. But everything I said after, everything I proposed at the company, that was real." "But it wasn't you," Liam said, his voice low. "You pretended to be someone who doesn't exist." "No," she replied firmly. "I am that person. I just wore a name you would accept." Victoria smiled, victorious. "I just thought everyone had the right to know who they were dealing with." Liam stood up. "You need to leave, Ilara. Please, Liam. Now." She didn't argue. She grabbed her purse and walked out. The sound of silverware hitting plates again felt like a final sentence. No goodbye, no hug, no defense. On the sidewalk, with tears welling in her eyes, she felt the mountain breeze chill her to the bone. She knew this moment would come. She just never imagined it would hurt this much. The bus wound its way down the mountain roads as Ilara finally let the tears fall. She had tried to hold them back, but the pain cut through everything. The blue dress she wore, bought in 3 installments, was now stained with coffee and shame. Notifications exploded on her phone. Someone had filmed Victoria's revelation and posted it on social media. The video had over 5,000 shares. The consultant who conned a millionaire. Housekeeper in disguise. Sentimental scammer. Ilara turned her phone off. At home, she found Caleb asleep on the sofa, covered with a crochet blanket their neighbor had left. The TV was still on, playing an old cartoon. She sat on the floor beside him in silence. There, in the darkness of her own home, smelling of reheated soup and laundry waiting to be folded, Ilara felt the full weight of the truth. She had lost everything. On Monday, she went to the company headquarters to collect her things. She didn't have the courage to go up. She waited in the lobby until Patricia, Liam's assistant, came down with a box in her hands and tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Ilara. I had no idea." "It's okay. Thank you. You weren't just good at your job, you were necessary. They don't see it yet, but they will." Ilara forced a smile but didn't reply. On the street, cars passed by unhurriedly. The world went on as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just been destroyed in front of an audience of rich people who would never understand what it's like to have to lie to survive. The next day, she went to 3 interviews. At one, they told her she was overqualified. At another, that the position had just been filled. At the third, the manager recognized her from the internet and said, "We value our company's image here. Good luck." On Wednesday, she went back to the resort where it all began. She went to human resources. She asked for any opening as a cleaning assistant. The HR woman looked at her name and shook her head. "Look, we prefer to avoid any controversy. You understand, right?" She understood perfectly. On Thursday, she went to the pharmacy. Caleb's medication was overdue. "That'll be $420, Ms. Vance," the pharmacist said. "If you can't pay by Monday, we'll have to suspend the prescription." Ilara walked out of there on shaky legs. She had $138 in her bank account and no idea what to do next. At home, she found Caleb looking out the window. "Why are you sad, Ellie?" She knelt beside him. "Just tired, my love. Are you still going to buy my robot legs?" Ilara felt her heart break. "I don't know, Caleb. I'm trying." That night, she lay on the kitchen floor and cried softly. She felt she had disappointed not only Liam, but herself. She had betrayed the woman she had fought so hard to be. All to live a lie, even if that lie was born from a very real love. For days, she avoided her phone. But on an impulse, she opened a gossip website. There she was. A photo from the lunch, looking terrified at the documents on the table. The headline read, "Class Deception, the Hoax of the Housekeeper Who Won Over a CEO." The comments were cruel. "Tried to be a gold digger and fell flat on her face." Serves her right. A cleaner should know her place. These poor girls always looking for a shortcut. Ilara closed the page. On Saturday afternoon, she went to the park with Caleb. He was excited. Someone had donated a used walker, and he wanted to test it out. She watched him from a distance, trying to force a smile. An older woman approached. It was Brenda, a former cook from the resort. "Ilara?" "Hi, Brenda. I heard about what happened. I wanted to call, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk. I wanted to disappear, honestly. I get it. But disappearing doesn't solve anything. It just postpones it. I know. I've tried." The two of them sat on a bench, watching Caleb play with the walker. "You know, Ilara, I was once fired unfairly too, because I complained about a late paycheck. They treated me like I was ungrateful. But I decided I would never depend on a boss again. So what did you do?" "I saved every penny and started my own kitchen. Healthy meal prep. But now I need help. Someone who knows about cleaning, organizing, customer service. I thought of you." Ilara's eyes widened. "You want me to work with you. I want you to be my partner. I don't have any money or a good name or... You have courage. And that's worth more than any resume." Ilara looked at her brother, laughing with his trembling, hopeful legs. Then she looked at her own hands, calloused but alive. "I'm in." She didn't know how or where to start, but for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. Have you ever had to bow your head even when you knew you weren't wrong? Ever had to smile on the outside while everything inside you was screaming? If so, just comment, "I have," below, just so I know you're out there, and that this story is a little bit yours too. In the following days, Ilara and Brenda started small. Nothing grand, nothing fancy, just the two of them and an old dream wrapped in new courage. They named the business Mother's Heart, Not just because Ilara was practically a mother to Caleb, but because they knew that what they lacked in money, they made up for in love, effort, and good food. They set up a small kitchen in the back of Brenda's house. They bought 2 larger pots second-hand, repurposed boxes for packaging, and printed black and white flyers with the help of Brenda's niece, who knew her way around editing software. "Real meals that taste like home," the flyer read. "Delivering in the neighborhood. Venmo and credit accepted for those in need." The first few weeks were slow. 10 meals a day, then 15. An electrician down the street recommended them to his workshop. A teacher spread the word at her school. Before they knew it, they were making 50 meals a week. Ilara would wake up at 5 a.m., get Caleb ready, take him to the neighborhood's inclusive daycare, and rush to the kitchen. There, she would peel, wash, season, pack, and deliver. At night, she studied with her phone in one hand and a notebook in her lap. But it wasn't just about the meals. It was about rebuilding herself from the inside out. Ilara was no longer a woman trying to hide who she was. She was a woman who owned who she was with pride. One day, Brenda showed up with a notebook. "I had a crazy idea. What if we write our stories? Tell the people eating our food where it comes from." Ilara laughed. "Who's going to want to read about 2 poor women struggling to pay their bills?" "That's exactly why. Because there are a lot of people like us. And people like us need to see themselves somewhere." They wrote their stories on the lids of the meal containers. Little snippets. Phrases like, "This food tastes like resilience. It was in the kitchen that I learned to love myself again." And something happened. The orders started coming in with messages. "I read this and cried. Reminds me of my mom. This is the best meal prep in the city, and not just because of the seasoning." At the end of the second month, a local journalist wrote a feature on them. "Entrepreneurs of Resistance." The article went viral on social media, and with it came an unexpected invitation. The city's Office of Social Development was organizing an event on productive inclusion. They wanted to invite Ilara to speak about her small business. "Me? Speak?" she asked, startled. "You," the assistant replied. "Your story could inspire a lot of people." Ilara considered saying no. She still felt the shame of what she'd been through, the fear of exposing her wounds. But that same night, Caleb, who had been listening from behind the curtain, said, "You're the bravest person I know, Ellie." On the day of the event, she wore the same blue skirt from the lunch at the mansion. Washed, ironed, standing on stage, like someone returning to the place where they fell, but now stronger. The audience was humble. Housewives, young people from the suburbs, small business owners, people who knew what it was like to start from scratch. Ilara told her story. She didn't hide the lie or the humiliation, but she spoke with conviction about the reason for it all: love, desperation, and the desire to give her brother a chance that life seemed to deny him. She spoke about invisibility, about dignity, about new beginnings. And when she finished, the entire room rose in an applause that felt like an embrace. In the back row, someone was filming discreetly. Hours later, the video reached Liam Sterling. He was in his office, tired from an endless meeting, when Patricia walked in. "I think you should see this." In the video, Ilara was saying, "The truth is, yes, I lied, but not to deceive. I lied to survive. And in the end, I learned that you don't have to disguise yourself to deserve respect. You just have to be seen." Liam said nothing. He just pressed play again and again, until something in his expression shifted. It wasn't anger or shame, it was longing, but it was still too soon to know what he would do with that. Meanwhile, Ilara was washing pots, flour up to her elbows and a tired smile on her face. But she was whole. Ilara was never the same after that day on stage, not because the world applauded, but because she, for the first time, wasn't ashamed of herself. In the days following the event, more people started seeking out Mother's Heart. They wanted the meals, yes, but they also wanted to meet the woman who spoke with such truth. "Ilara, you made me cry," said a retired teacher. "I'm thinking about going back to school because of you," a 17-year-old told her, reading the flyers as if they were poetry. But despite this newfound strength, Ilara's transformation wasn't a smooth flight. There was fear, setbacks, doubts. 2 weeks after her speech, she received an email. Invitation to join a panel in San Francisco, Women's Leadership Forum. She deleted it without replying. It felt like too much. "You have to go," Brenda insisted. "I'm a cook, not a leader. You're both. And that's why you have to go." Ilara accepted. She bought the ticket in installments, took a bus, and wore a suit borrowed from a neighbor down the street. At the event, she stood at the back of the room, watching women with PhDs, bank executives, and startup CEOs. She thought about going home. But when she stepped onto the stage, something shifted. "I don't have an MBA," she began, "but I have my grandmother's name etched into my hands from scrubbing floors, and it was from her that I learned what dignity is." The audience fell silent. "When everything fell apart, I could have hidden, but I discovered that you can start over even with a broken heart, as long as you have the courage to stop pretending." More applause. On the way back, she slept leaning against the bus window, watching the streetlights pass like thoughts. She dreamed of Caleb running in the yard with his new exoskeleton. She was still halfway from affording it. But now, there was real hope. In the kitchen, Ilara and Brenda were already producing more than they could handle. They bought a used refrigerator, replaced the old pots, started an Instagram profile. They posted simple videos, the meal of the day, inspirational quotes, snippets of their story. "This is getting serious," Brenda said with a tired smile. "It's becoming our life," Ilara replied. In parallel, Ilara went back to school. She re-enrolled at the community college, where she had paused her psychology studies. The classes were online at night. She borrowed books from the local library. Caleb loved helping her study. "What's this word, Ellie?" he'd ask, pointing at her notebook. "Empathy. And what's that?" She would look at him and smile. "It's when you feel what someone else is feeling, like when you cry and I cry with you." One afternoon she received an unexpected call. "Ms. Ilara Vance?" "Yes, this is the Municipal Association of Small Businesses. Your name was recommended by a partner company to receive a microloan. I didn't apply for any loan. But you were nominated by Terra Nova Solutions." Ilara was silent for a moment. "Liam, with the money, they bought a new warming cabinet, insulated containers, and hired a young neighbor to help with deliveries. The business grew. The woman grew with it. But it wasn't just in the meals or the events. It was in the mirror, in the way she walked, the way she spoke, the way she saw herself. She no longer pretended to be an HR consultant. She was a real entrepreneur, a caregiver, a sister, a survivor who no longer needed to lie. Still, every now and then, the memory of Liam would return, a gesture, a scent, a song on the radio. Sometimes at the end of the day, she would close her eyes and wonder, does he still think of me? But now, that question no longer paralyzed her. Because with or without him, she was finally the author of her own story. The university auditorium was packed, seats filled with students, professors, local entrepreneurs, journalists. On the big screen, the event's theme, Entrepreneurship with Soul, Stories that Inspire. Ilara was in the makeshift green room, a water bottle in her hand and a knot in her stomach that felt tighter than ever before. This wasn't a neighborhood event. This was the university where she had started her studies, where years ago she had left in shame because she couldn't afford the tuition. Now she was here as the guest of honor. "Ilara?" the coordinator called. "You're on after this next panel." She nodded, trying to breathe deeply. Brenda was in the audience, sitting next to Caleb, who wore a t-shirt that read, "Mother's Heart, Food for the Body and Soul." He now walked with the help of the new exoskeleton, bought with prize money from a social award Ilara had won months earlier. On her phone, just before going on, Ilara saw an anonymous text. No name, no picture, just one sentence. No lie can erase who you truly are. Good luck today. She knew who it was from. When her name was announced, the audience applauded before she even said a word. Many already knew her from the newspaper article, others from social media. But there, in front of everyone, she wasn't some makeshift celebrity. She was a woman ready to tell her own story, the whole thing. She walked onto the stage with steady steps. She took the microphone with her bare hands. No rings, no nail polish, no mask. "Good evening," her voice rang out, strong and clear. The room fell silent. "I'm Ilara Vance, and for a long time, I thought I had to be someone else to be heard. But tonight I'm here to tell you, you don't have to dress up in power to have worth." The front row already had tears in their eyes. "I was born in a small house. I lost my parents young. I raised my brother alone. I worked as a cleaner, a cashier, a delivery driver. One day, completely exhausted, I fell asleep in a millionaire's bed." The audience laughed, surprised and captivated. "He mistook me for a consultant, and I let him. For 3 months I lived a life that wasn't mine, but everything I said, everything I proposed came from what I had lived, from real pain, from invisible experience." She paused. "One day the truth came out, and I was exposed, humiliated, rejected. And you know what? It was the best thing that could have happened to me. Because it was only when everything came crashing down that I began to build myself up with my own 2 hands. The applause started quietly and grew into a wave. Today, I have a small business. I have incredible partners. I have a son of my heart who is walking again, and I am proud of who I am. Without a degree, without a famous last name, but with truth." She took a deep breath. "So, if anyone listening to me tonight thinks you need to be someone different to claim your space, let me tell you a secret. The world already has more than enough people pretending to be perfect. What it's missing is people who have the courage to be real." The audience was on its feet. A standing ovation, cheers, hugs. From the back of the room, a man watched. Grey suit, an emotional look in his eyes. Liam Sterling. Ilara didn't see him at first. She was busy greeting students, taking pictures with kids, receiving hugs from people who said, "You represent me." But suddenly, between one question and the next, she saw a familiar face in the back. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time stood still. He gave a slight nod. He didn't approach. He didn't invade her space. He just smiled as if to say, "Now I see the real you." Ilara smiled back, but she didn't run. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for explanations, because the version of her that needed to be accepted no longer existed. At the end of the night, while packing her things, she found an envelope in her bag. No return address, just a sentence written by hand. "The lie hid you. The truth made you shine." Inside was a Terra Nova Solutions brochure and an invitation. "We invite Ilara Vance to lead a workshop on empathy and active listening for our new leaders. As she herself taught us, people need people before processes." She held the paper for a moment, took a deep breath and smiled, because in that moment she understood. Her turning point wasn't when she walked into the company pretending to be someone else. It was when she walked out of it being who she truly was. Now, she was the one who decided her worth. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of being seen. In the week following the event, the video of Ilara's speech spread like wildfire. It started with a share from a student, then a professor posted it on LinkedIn, and soon it was on news sites, entrepreneurship blogs, single mothers groups, feminist accounts, and podcasts about overcoming adversity. In less than a week, she was a topic of discussion on at least 3 national news channels. From housekeeper to entrepreneur, the woman who moved the nation with her truth. But what surprised Ilara most wasn't the sudden fame. It was who emerged from behind the likes, messages, and reconnections. The manager who had refused to rehire her at the resort sent an email. "We made a huge mistake with you. If you ever want to come back, our doors are open." She didn't reply, The HR director at Terra Nova, who once wouldn't even greet her in the elevator, was now writing long posts about the impact of lived diversity on organizational leadership, and citing Ilara as the prime example. Liam, he kept a respectful, observant distance, but he helped in his own way. He connected her with suppliers, recommended her business to partner companies, and silently sponsored a local entrepreneurship event where Ilara was the keynote speaker. Victoria Davenport, on the other hand, reacted as people like her often do, with elegant silence. She even posted some indirect jabs on social media, like, "Some people get ahead in life by dramatizing their own failures." But this time no one bought her narrative. Many criticized her openly. "Victoria, you belittled someone who was just trying to survive. The shame wasn't hers, it was yours. Class can't be bought with an imported handbag." Victoria's public image began to slowly crumble, like a house of cards in the wind of truth. As for Ilara, she just kept growing. From word of mouth, she expanded to regional delivery. From delivery to selling frozen meal kits to corporate offices. A group of nutritionists offered to create functional menus for her. A volunteer designer proposed a rebranding of her visual identity. In less than 6 months, what started as a makeshift kitchen became a formal business with a tax ID, invoices, and a waiting list for weekly orders. She now employed 4 women, all single mothers or heads of their households. One Friday afternoon, while organizing labels with Caleb at the kitchen table, she received a call from the city. "Ms. Vance, we're organizing the regional festival of the solidarity economy, and we would be honored if you would give the opening speech." "Me? But why?" "Because you are living proof that it's possible to succeed without stepping on anyone to get there." That same week, she received another invitation, this one personal, from Liam, not by phone, not by email, but in a note delivered by Patricia, who appeared discreetly at her kitchen's entrance. "I'm organizing a Terra Nova event on productive inclusion. There is no one else I would rather hear on that stage than you. If there is still room for a new beginning, I'll be there, with respect, with truth. L." Ilara read and reread it. She thought about the past, the fear, the pain, but she also thought about who she was now. On the night of the event, she arrived in a simple, beautiful dress, bought with last month's profits. Her hair was pulled back, her face was clear, and she carried a peace that no one could take from her. Applause greeted her as she walked on stage. Liam, on the other side, stood up, not with the pride of an owner, but with the admiration of an equal. "Good evening," she began. "The last time I stood before many of you, I was a walking lie. Tonight, it's just me, and I can assure you it's much lighter to live this way." The audience smiled. "We all have fears, we all have stories we hide in shame. But the world only changes when someone has the courage to speak their truth out loud. That's what I did, and it's what I hope each of you can do one day." More applause. At the end, as the audience dispersed, Liam approached. "I came for the event, but I also came for you." Ilara looked at him calmly. "I'm not the woman you met in that bed, Liam. I know, and that's exactly why I'm here." She smiled. She didn't respond with promises or with apologies, just with presence. There, among the applause, the smiles, and the reunions, she understood. The world didn't need to bow to her, it just needed to respect her, because now the one holding her own story in her hands was her. And the person who once fell asleep from exhaustion in a luxury bed now woke up by choice in a world where she could finally breathe in peace. Ilara learned the hard way that not every fall is the end. Some, in fact, are just beginnings in disguise, beginnings that only reveal themselves after the shame fades, after the ground feels firm again, and silence transforms into courage. For so long, she thought she needed to be someone else to deserve love, to be heard, to have a place. But the truth is, the world is constantly trying to convince the invisible that they will only have value if they wear a costume. And she wore one. Out of fear, out of love, out of desperation. And yes, she made a mistake. But her mistake wasn't dreaming big. It wasn't speaking eloquently without a degree. It wasn't loving a man from a different world. Her mistake was doubting her own worth. And that would never happen again. Today, Ilara understands that she doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Her truth is enough, because she learned the difference between recognition and respect. The first comes from the outside. The second comes from within. She could have hidden after everything. She could have spent her life trying to explain herself, but she chose to do something harder, to keep going, to keep her head held high, to keep her hands steady, to keep saying good morning even to those who rooted against her, to keep building a world where other women like her could exist without asking for permission. And maybe that's the greatest lesson. It's not what the world says about you that defines who you are. It's what you do with what they said. Ilara took the stones they threw at her and built a staircase. She forgave those who couldn't see her. But most importantly, she forgave herself for ever believing she needed their approval. Now, when Caleb runs through the living room with his metal braces and shouts, "Look, Ellie, I'm flying," she smiles and replies, "You sure are, my love. And I'm flying with you, because the flight that truly matters is the one that begins from within." Today, Mother's Heart operates out of its own space, a renovated warehouse in the neighborhood where Ilara grew up. 7 women work there, all with similar stories: abandonment, new beginnings, courage. Ilara doesn't call anyone an employee. She calls them partners. The menu has grown. The meals are now named after feelings: strength, embrace, hope. And every delivery still comes with a handwritten note, because she knows sometimes what truly nourishes isn't just the food. Caleb has physical therapy 3 times a week. He no longer uses a walker all the time. He walks with difficulty but with pride. At school, he's known as the boy with the robot legs. And when people ask what he wants to be when he grows up, he answers without a second thought, "I want to take care of people." Just like my sister. Brenda, her partner and friend, has become the boy's official godmother and her all-around advisor. Whenever Ilara thinks about giving up on a project, Brenda is the one who says, "Let's go. We've come this far. Nobody's stopping us now." And Liam? He moved back to San Francisco. He stayed with Terra Nova, but in a more discreet role. He created a new division in the company focused on social impact projects. He appointed other women, more diverse, more connected to the country's reality. Every now and then, he sends an update. They didn't end up together, but they ended up at peace, because the love they shared, however brief, left something beautiful behind: respect. And that, for Ilara, is worth more than any forced reconciliation. As for Victoria Davenport, she vanished from the headlines, cancelled by her own arrogance. She lost contracts and prestige. No one knows for sure where she is now. But deep down, Ilara holds no grudge. She just hopes that one day, she too will find her own truth. Ilara's story became a documentary, a book, a keynote topic, but she never liked the labels herself. "I just did what had to be done," she often says. And maybe that's what makes her story so powerful, because in the end, it's not about fame or perfect justice. It's about dignity, about getting up after the fall, about looking in the mirror and saying, "I am enough," with or without the applause. And now whenever someone asks, "How did it all begin?" Ilara smiles and replies, "It began the day I fell asleep in a bed that wasn't mine, and woke up, finally, as myself." If this story touched your heart, if at any point you felt like it was speaking to you, go ahead and hit that like button. It shows that these stories still matter. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this message has traveled. Subscribe to the channel if you believe that real people deserve to be seen, heard, and respected. And now, pick one of the stories appearing on your screen, because the next one might be even more powerful than this. I'll see you in the next video.